from Starbase, Texas.
T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 3, 2. Booster after chamber pressure is nominal.
Seconds into flight, we are feeling the rumble. We are seeing 33 out of 33 Raptor engines ignited on the Super Heavy booster.
Booster and ship, avionics, power, and telemetry nominal. Acquisition of signal, Corpus Christi.
Continuing to get good call outs, our trajectory looking nominal, systems looking nominal. Just amazing to see all 33 lit up once again. All right, we just passed through max Q, so we're going to continue on up. We still have about a minute and 30 seconds until we get to stage separation. Starship now flying faster than the speed of sound. All right, so you got a couple of views. You got some ground trackers in your top camera there. You're looking down from the top of the booster in the bottom left, and then a camera in the top flap of the ship looking back in the bottom right, so getting a couple of different looks as Starship heads uphill. Once we get the hot staging, a lot of things happen all at once simultaneously. We're going to light the engines on the ship, starting with the RVACs first, and then the 3 center sea level engines before we're separated. All of that exhaust gets plumed out the side of the hot stage, and then the ship will separate itself. All but the 3 center engines on the booster are going to shut down, so the booster never stops its thrust while we go through this hot stage maneuver.
Minutes. Onboard view from Starship. And there's views of the Raptor engines on the second stage as we prepare for stage separation. Now, after stage separation, the first stage will flip and begin a boost back maneuver for landing in the Gulf. Continuing to fly, 2 minutes 40 seconds. Let's get ready for main engine cutoff.
Stage separation.
Boost back startup.
Ship engine ignition.
You're hearing the cheering. The first ever successful hot stage for SpaceX's Starship.
Incredible views of our Super Heavy booster. And as you can see, the Super Heavy booster has just experienced a rapid, unscheduled disassembly. Should separate from the Super Heavy booster.
Yeah, Kate, right now it looks like we saw the start of the flip, but obviously we're seeing from the ground cameras the entire Starship stack continuing to rotate. We should have had separation by now. Obviously, this is does not appear to be a nominal situation.
Yeah, it does appear to be spinning, but I do want to remind everyone that everything after clearing the tower was icing on the cake. Lots of excitement. So right here, this is This is our view of the jettisoned hot stage. As we mentioned, this is a temporary fix to help reduce the weight of the booster. So we have the Super Heavy booster. Future iterations will have a lighter weight integrated hot stage structure that won't need to be jettisoned. Now, after we jettison that hot stage, the booster will begin to attempt its water landing in the Gulf. In the meantime, the ship will coast for about 40 minutes or so up to an altitude of 214 kilometers. And after its coast phase, it will attempt a controlled re-entry, including a flip maneuver and a landing burn, just before splashing down in the Indian Ocean. But as a reminder, we are not attempting...
Trajectory nominal.
Good news there. Trajectory is looking good for the ship, which is on the right-hand side of your screen.
Vehicle's on a nominal trajectory.
Good news there, telling us that the path that Starship is on is good. Now, Starship's second stage is still firing its engines, and as you heard, following planned flight path, the ship objectives, we're looking for hot staging, again, cruised right through that. We're looking to demonstrate controlled ascent, as well as orbital insertion. Now, the bottom right-hand corner of your screen shows the ship engine graphics, so be sure to keep an eye on those.
Yep, Kate, this is just a phenomenal test so far. Super Heavy is performing beautifully today. It's on its return leg of the journey. Ship continuing to burn its 6 engines, those larger circles, the Raptor vacuum engines, the inner circles, the Raptor sea level engines. We're about 30 seconds away, just under 30 seconds away from the start of the boost back burn. The landing burn on the booster. You can see the grid fins rotating. Those hypersonic grid fins are guiding us through the atmosphere back towards our splashdown site. Again, we're going for a splashdown, a soft splashdown. So for landing burn, we're going to expect to see the 13 center engines light, rapidly bring down the booster's velocity, and then just the 3 in the center for splashdown. Let's see if that'll work. We're getting a few engines.
The right-hand side of view from the ship. And you can see those grid fins on your left-hand screen rotating and turning to guide the booster. And there's that landing burn. That landing burn just begun. And you can see the water below. And we have splashdown. What an incredible sight! Congratulations to the SpaceX team!
Ship has entered terminal guidance.
That was absolutely incredible. The first successful splashdown of the Super Heavy booster. Loved seeing it just tip over into the water before losing that footage. Now the next milestone is coming up in about under a minute. Ship is going to shut off its Raptor engines,
Ship engine cut off.
which we see right there. As we mentioned before, today's test flight is not an orbital flight, but rather one that demonstrates the Starship's orbital capability, where vehicle operators are standing by. Now, the next milestone coming up is in less than a minute. At that point, ship will, or I'm sorry, actually it already has.
Ship engine cut off.
There we go. As you heard there by the call out and from the crowd behind us, Starship's 6 Raptor engines have successfully shut down. We heard a call out for nominal orbital insertion, which is incredible. Look at these views, Dan.
I'm just completely blown away right now. what a day. Congratulations to the entire SpaceX team. I mean, this flight pretty much just started, but we're farther than we've ever been before. We've got a Starship not just in space, but on its coast phase into space. Wow. Congrats to everybody that's just been putting in insane amounts of hours on everything to make this thing a reality. And I feel like every single time we do one of these, we're seeing something wildly new. We got to see the hot stage jettison and the booster in the water. But just to recap real quick over everything that's happened. So we lifted off at 7:50 a.m. only 9 minutes ago. How has it only been 9 minutes? 7:50 a.m. Central at 12:50 UTC. We saw 32 of the 33 Raptor engines on Super Heavy make the ascent. We had successful cutoff, successful hot staging, all 6 engines on the ship, powered it all the way into a nominal orbital trajectory. And we've already been getting some live views from the ship on board. After that, the booster was able to do its boost back burn. Oh, this looks like we're actually getting some views from the ground still, potentially from Florida, of the ship as it's up there. That's a view from some of our tracking cameras on the ground in Florida. But the ship, we just heard successful orbital insertion, so it's right where it needs to be, and is now going to continue on its way to coast until it comes to reentry. But I mean, the booster, successful boost back burn, jettison the hot stage, and then a landing burn. It looked like we saw 12 of the 13 engines light up, and then that first ever soft splashdown in the water. So a whole lot still to come. Ship now on its way to its primary objective of entry. That's going to be coming up in just under 40 minutes from now. So a lot still to come, but wow, what a 9 minutes to start this mission off. So can't wait to see what entry is going to show us, but that launch was incredible. Back over to you, Jesse and Kate.
Wow. I am still trying to catch my breath here. That was some incredible views that we have never seen before. It has been nonstop since liftoff, and with the booster having completed its job for the day, we're going to take a short break for about the next 28 minutes, and we'll return while we're going to take a break while the ship is continuing to coast before re-entry.
Exactly. As with Flight 3, Starlink may enable us to talk with the ship through re-entry with no communication blackout. We are still testing Starlink during this phase of flight, so of course nothing is certain. However, if we do have views, we will be sure to bring those to you live. Views such as the one, that we had. Well, of course, because I said it went away. So we will try to bring those to you live.
Exactly. Views or no views, we'll see you back here at T plus 40 minutes for coverage of Starship's re-entry, flip maneuver, landing burn, and splashdown.
Starship flight test, which lifted off from Starbase, Texas at 8:25 a.m. Central Time. Our main objective today was to get through all of our ascent burns and collect as much data as possible, including a potential Starship entry. And we just came out of a coast phase and were treated to a number of HD views thanks to Starlink, including the PEZ door open-close test. So that was one of our test objectives today that we met. So that's awesome. It has been such a great day.
It has been a phenomenal test day. Just to see booster lifting a Starship to ascent, ship completing its ascent. Just a wonderful day. Kind of to recap the objectives a little bit. Booster completed its ascent, ignited its 33 Raptor engines. We demonstrated a successful hot staging for the second time. Booster completed the boost back burn, didn't quite accomplish the landing burn and then had a hard splashdown in the Gulf. Meanwhile, Ship completely successful after the hot staging. We had a good 6-engine burn of the Raptor vacuum engines and sea level engines. And then we've commanded a number of demonstrations, including the Starlink satellite deploy demo, so the payload door, as well as a prop transfer demonstration. We do still need to do some data review on those, so as we get that data back, we'll be sure to update you on social for how those tests went. We are coming up on our next major milestones, which is an in-space relight of our Raptor engine for the first time, followed by re-entry and then landing in the Indian Ocean.
Incredible.
Yeah, that's right, guys. We should be just about 40 seconds away, 40 or 50 seconds away, if we do this relight demo. Do want to stress this is not a deorbit burn. In fact, it's actually going to function a little bit opposite of a deorbit burn. We're going to be raising our perigee with this burn for the lowest point of our orbit. This is just to demonstrate that we can relight a Raptor engine on Ship while it's gone through a coast, while it's in outer space, while it's in microgravity, all of the different complexities that come with lighting this engine again after it's already done an ascent burn, but you're now coasting through space. This is going to be really important anytime we want to do in-space maneuvers in the future, like eventual deorbit burns. Any of our translunar injections that'll have Raptor engines firing back up. We may not do it. There is all of the guidance is loaded into Starship's computer itself, so if it doesn't see the values that it needs to, we could just skip the burn. So we are waiting to find out if that's going to happen or not. If it doesn't, as we said in the beginning, we're on a pretty steep trajectory that we are coming home no matter what, regardless of doing a burn. This was done just so we can really, we're in a trajectory that's really not super susceptible to delta V changes in velocity. If we were to do a burn, we've got a pretty concise footprint in the Indian Ocean that we're going to be targeting for splashdown today. It does sound like we are skipping past the on-orbit relight demo this time. Again, we'll confirm all of this through our post-flight data review, but it did sound like we did pass through that burn. So now that's going to start setting us up for re-entry.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So coming up next around T plus 49 minutes is Starship re-entry. Now, this is typically a portion of flight where we don't have communications with spacecraft because they're...
Yeah, that's right, Kate. And Starlink's what's really allowing us to capture as much data as possible, especially through this re-entry. Updated animation, landing burn. I hope we get to see it for real today. But these live views that we're getting now and we're going to continue to get are through Starlink. That's going to allow us to get as much data as possible, which we've said it before, we're going to say it 9,000 times. The data is the payload on these flights. So as much as we can learn, that's just going to pay dividends on all of our future flights and help us get Starship to an operational phase. Re-entry, obviously a really critical phase of the flight, and it's the one that we're now most focused on cracking to get us closer to that full reusability. Starlink is going to be able to send us data back all the way through re-entry. We've done some additional testing, and we're expecting to be able to get data from Starlink thanks to its high frequency and kind of the orientation and everything of Starship all the way through re-entry. And then got a new view here. We have two external views. We had this one on Flight 3. We've got two for this one. And we're going to continue adding views as we continue to evolve Starship. Again, this is an experimental vehicle. Believe me, I want as many camera views as you all do. So huge shout out to the AVI and the software teams and everybody that's been working with us. We're getting more cameras on Starship, not just because it looks cool, but this provides an incredible insight into re-entry, which is, historically a really tough window to look through.
Approaching entry interface.
The physics of re-entry are insanely intense. One of my favorite NASA astronauts, Victor Glover, recently described it as with the forces and the flows and the temperatures, it's like pointing at a raging river in one spot and saying, tell me exactly what's happening right there. And like that's what a ship is experiencing as it goes through, as it's moving through the atmosphere at more than 5 miles a second and heating up to thousands of degrees. So just having visual representation, just being able to see what's happening, is incredibly valuable. So these views are going to be through Starlink. We've got this one. This is in one of the forward flaps looking back. So if you see it rotating around, that's because, again, it's embedded in one of those forward flaps. So as we get through and we start to build up density in the atmosphere, this view is going to move around as the flap does. And then the other one we had a little bit earlier is looking at one of the other forward flaps on the other side. Eventually, we're going to keep adding more cameras to Starship, get a couple of different views from the outside of all the different areas, and then also eventually to be able to see payloads once they're deployed. So a lot more exciting stuff coming up in the future. But right now we're getting closer to re-entry. Again, we're going to be moving at hypersonic speeds at more than 5 times the speed of sound. We're going to see that plasma start to build. So, Kate, Jesse, excitement coming up.
Yeah, as you can see with that view on your screen, again, high def brought to us by Starlink. We can see the plasma beginning to build as the ship is getting closer to the Earth's atmosphere. Now, let's talk a little bit about how Starship will survive re-entry, hopefully, and control itself.
Exactly. We've been talking about this entire flight test. There's 18,000 hexagonal ceramic tiles surrounding the bottom portion or the Earth-facing side of the ship.
Through 100 kilometers altitude, good altitude for entry.
Great call-outs there. Now, during atmospheric re-entry, the vehicle is going to see temperatures as high as 2,600 degrees Fahrenheit or over 1,400 degrees Celsius. So those tiles are there to help protect the vehicle from this extreme heat.
Yeah, and the flaps will help control it. Now, one noticeable difference I see immediately, those flaps are not moving as much as they were on Flight 3. So that is a great sign, right? We had...
And, oh man, we can see the heating on those flaps as we're starting to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere. This is where the Earth's atmosphere is doing the work to slow us down.
Now, like we said, this plasma field is, what a view. We hope to maintain these views throughout. Starship is so big that we're hoping that the plasma field doesn't entirely blanket the entire vehicle. Right now, it is not. The Starlinks are
Views brought to you by Starlink.
Yeah, the Starlinks are still communicating and still capturing the data and the video that we see here. I mean, Shiva, this is just absolutely incredible views. We've never seen anything like this before. This is the biggest flying object ever in space.
Absolutely, Kate. And it's important to note, with the ascent burn that we did was to get us to orbital velocities, even though we were on a nearly orbital trajectory. So the heating and the loads that Starship is going through right now are what it would be getting if it were recovering from an orbital mission. And just the fact that we have views through entry, this is incredible.
Yeah. Again, this is the furthest and fastest that Starship has ever flown. And you can definitely tell by the crowd here in Hawthorne.
The heat shield tiles doing their work. We talked about it earlier. Up to 2,600 degrees Fahrenheit that those heat shield tiles are dissipating as we are re-entering.
Yeah, now this was one of the critical, or rather the key mission objectives that we were hoping to hit today. We have never, like I said before, this is the fastest and furthest that Starship has ever flown. So this is the first time that we're getting to collect this re-entry data and understand how these 18,000 hexagonal heat shield tiles are working together to protect the belly of Starship as it re-enters the Earth's atmosphere. Once again, the atmosphere is doing us a big favor here by...
80 kilometers altitude.
The atmosphere is actually doing us a huge favor here by acting as a braking system for Starship as it re-enters the atmosphere.
And that's part of the reason why the flaps are so important. We're using the body of Starship and the drag from the atmosphere to slow us down from orbital speed, but you want the vehicle to remain stable. You want those heat shield tiles pointed down so they can absorb the heat of the Earth's atmosphere. And so that's the purpose that they are serving during the hypersonic phase and then again during the subsonic phase.
Absolutely. So like we said, these views are being provided by a couple Starlink terminals that are positioned on Starship itself. As that plasma builds, we're hoping that we can bring these views back to you, but you can see the telemetry there on the right-hand side of your screen. If you watch closely, you can see the speed decelerating. Again, that's the friction of the atmosphere resulting in this plasma field, or excuse me, the blanket that is potentially blocking the Starlink terminals right now. So we'll bring those views back to you if we get them. But right now, for those of you that have recently joined, Starship is currently re-entering Earth's atmosphere. This is super exciting because it's the furthest and fastest that Starship has ever flown.
It's just absolutely incredible. Major test milestone, something we wanted to accomplish on Flight 2, getting to it today. So just awesome.
The iterations, the learning.
Starship is now in expected peak heating region.
All right, great news there, telling us that this is basically the hottest point that Starship should get during its re-entry. Now, the heat shield is working with the atmosphere for some free braking, okay? The atmosphere is helping to slow the Starship down.
Yeah, exactly. We're not using any engines or thrust to slow the vehicle down. Exactly what Kate mentioned. We're just using the atmosphere and those heat shield tiles protecting the vehicle as it's coming through that high heat temperature.
Yeah. Now, this is another one of those moments that we have been waiting for. Right now, the ship is currently re-entering the Earth's atmosphere, and by all looks and all call-outs that we're hearing on the net, it is doing pretty well. Now, we do not plan to recover the spacecraft today, but rapid and reliable reusability is the ultimate goal.
And just pausing to just take in this incredible new and different view that we're seeing. We did get a similar view in Flight 3, but again, the vehicle did lose a little bit of its control, attitude control, and this is a very stable view. This is great. This is exactly what we want, and we are hearing that we're getting expected call-outs.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Starship is seeing half a G of acceleration, remains on a good entry trajectory.
You know, it's incredible to look at this photo and wonder, wait, is it real? Is it frozen? We can see so I was just going to say
Those temperatures have stopped increasing.
Oh, that is great news. The temperature is no longer building. But I was saying, we have a little bit of indication there. We can see that streaking that occurs and tells us that this is indeed a true view. So once again, we are looking basically through the plasma that is building up around the exterior of the ship.
And I still cannot get over that we are getting a live view of re-entry right now, live on your screen. Again, we've said this over and over, but all thanks to Starlink. We are able to use Starlink in space, which we're getting this incredible data. And not only just the data from the sensors, but getting live imagery of what is actually happening, which is great, which we've never been able to do live before.
Right. Now, just a quick future outlook here. So in about, at T plus about 1 hour and 2 minutes, we should hear a call out for entry transonic. That means that the ship is going near the speed of sound. And then about a minute after that, we'll hear another call out saying entry subsonic, meaning that the ship is going below the speed of sound. So these are all continued indications that the atmosphere, right, as the ship comes back down, it is getting through the more dense part of the atmosphere, and that atmosphere is helping to push against the vehicle, and those heat shields are protecting the vehicle during this high heat period.
Yeah, Kate and Jesse, we're starting to see as the atmosphere gets denser, you're starting to see a few more particles make an appearance in the plasma there. You can see you're looking down at the aft end of the ship in the top left, and you're seeing essentially the flame build up as we go through reentry. You've been hearing the call-outs. They're tracking things like temperatures in the nose cone, and those were right where we modeled them to be, which is really cool to see and to see in real time. But we're coming up, we're at about 67 kilometers in altitude. Our last signal with the ship on Flight 3 was at 65, so we should be making it past that point shortly. Obviously, as you guys pointed out, we're in a much better control this time as we re-entered in the right attitude, and our flaps have been steering the way so far. Once we get through transonic, that's when you've got essentially
Raptor landing bird.
Different areas around the vehicle where the air is either moving faster or slower than the speed of sound. We'll eventually get to subsonic, which we have some experience with. We did in our suborbital campaign.
Start of Raptor chill.
And Starship will eventually get down to its terminal velocity as it's floating down to the water. That's just about 200 miles an hour or so. We are hearing that we're starting to chill some of the engines as we are, if we make it all the way down to the water, still going to attempt a landing burn, but still a ways to go. We're at about 64 kilometers in altitude right now. We made it through what's expected to be the peak heating, but now we're going to start encountering increased pressures as the atmosphere gets thicker and thicker. So we're at 63 kilometers, so we've already made it farther than we did on our last flight when that last signal was coming at 65 kilometers. So again, what we're really looking at here is the performance of the heat shield, of the flaps, of the seals in the flaps. There's just a whole bunch of different areas that we're keeping a really close eye on as we re-enter.
Starship remains on a good entry trajectory.
And looking like we're still on a good trajectory. If you're seeing little camera moves, that's the flap moving as it continues to maintain the attitude of the vehicle as it re-enters. And I mean, not just camera views, but we've got sensors inside the ship. We've got those sensors down at the very aft end of the vehicle where we pointed out we had some intentionally missing tiles, where we've got some sensors looking at just how hot it's getting around there. We intentionally put those in essentially the least critical part of the heat shield, where if you had any kind of a breach, it wouldn't be great for reusability, but wouldn't be critical for actual making it through the re-entry into the landing. "58 kilometers, we're continuing to descend. Again, right now we are over the Indian Ocean. We're actually getting closer and closer to that expected splashdown point, which is just to the off the northwest corner of Australia. And if you keep an eye on our speed, the speed is dropping. We're hitting the thicker part of the atmosphere now. The speed's going to start dropping precipitously. We're going to start getting to transonic pretty soon, and then after that we'll get into subsonic, where we're moving less than the speed of sound. But wow, what a light show so far!
External temperatures are starting to come down.
Again, this camera view is looking right at one of the forward flaps. And we're strategically putting some cameras around the vehicle to just look at the different areas that looks like we got the flap starting to come apart a little.
Yeah, it does appear that we have a little bit of burn through there. We can see pieces of the vehicle flying off. What a show it has been. It's been like watching Interstellar or something.
This is wild to see this, but the ship is still coming down, which is incredible to see.
How far can it go? That is the question.
Keep your eye on the altitude in the bottom right-hand corner. We're at 54 kilometers right now.
Now, ultimately, the data is the payload today. We've been saying it multiple times. Our teams are sitting, reviewing this data live, learning where the hot spots are. As you can see, there's an obvious hot spot there with the flap, and learning how we can improve this design. The goal was to get as far through this high heat re-entry as possible. Ideally, we'd love to make it all the way down and perform that landing burn and flip maneuver, but we may not get that far today. We will see.
Again, this is a test, and we are gathering as much data as possible, visual data as well, which we can see here. We are getting a lot of debris covering the camera on your screen, but we can still see some of those sparks and flames from that high heat as ship is making its way back down to Earth.
Ship now at 50 kilometers and closing. The good news is we still got, looks like that camera lens just cracked. It's safe to say ship's getting a little beat up, but that's to be expected on a test flight. We are still learning how to improve the ship for total survival and recovery of the high heat reentry.
I'm honestly impressed that we're still getting this live view despite how much debris is coming off of this flap right now.
The fact that we've got it is good news. And I may have jinxed it. I apologize. Look at that, it's back.
We are still going.
And the teams here at SpaceX are excited, as you can tell by the cheering behind us. There's still a sizable crowd here at Mission Control Center, Hawthorne.
A splashdown is expected in just about 4 minutes from now. And we're still moving. We still have live views. Starlink is doing an incredible job.
Maximum entry dynamic pressure. External temperatures are dropping.
Okay, good news. Those external pressures are dropping. The question is, how much of the ship is left? We can't really tell. We can still see some of that particulate coming off. And unfortunately, we do have a cracked camera lens. But for any photographers out there and videographers, we know that's part of the gig sometimes.
Yeah, and you can see that the speed is rapidly slowing down. That's actually really great news for us. We want the vehicle to be slowing down before it splashes down into the ocean. That'll help set us up for that flip maneuver, engines first down into the water.
Exactly. So we have seen this flip maneuver demonstrated on previous high altitude flight tests like serial number 8. Oh, more views. Or I should say, more light coming through the view that we have through that cracked and dirtied lens there. But yeah, so we're hoping that this flip maneuver, that we can pull it off as soon as we get those views back. If we can get them, if the ship is still around, we will bring it back to you.
Vehicle has passed maximum dynamic pressure.
That is great news. Maximum dynamic pressure being the moment in which the vehicle experiences the greatest amount of aerodynamic pressure. Speed still dropping. We're now at 37 kilometers above the ocean. Just like Flight 3, we are targeting a splashdown in the water in the Indian Ocean.
And we don't have a live view right now, but because we're still getting data and telemetry, that does tell us that ship is still doing okay, at least. And there we got that live view back. The crowd very excited to see that view, despite not being able to see very much.
The fact that it's there tells us the ship is still alive.
Yes, and collecting data, continuing to collect data as we get closer and closer to Earth.
Yes, now 30 kilometers, now 29 above the Indian
Starship is
Ocean.
at 30 kilometers altitude, Mach 2.
Sounds like the vehicle's traveling, as we just heard, Mach 2, which is, looks like we might, I thought maybe it might clear up. It is a little bit, now at T plus 1 hour, 3 minutes and 13 seconds into Starship Flight 4, hoping that the ship can hang on. It's probably potentially hanging on by a couple of bolts and threads, but it's still going, and that is excellent news.
That deceleration is looking incredible. We're about to go under 1,000 kilometers per hour.
Yeah.
Starship
And
is at 20 kilometers altitude.
now keep in mind that even though we can't see anything, the data itself is what we really are.
Starship is subsonic.
Subsonic, they're telling us it's traveling below the speed of sound. That movement means the flaps are actuating. I think we can see something. This is a nail biter. But we are, unfortunately, we can't see through the lens, but we're still getting the feed. Starship is now 11 kilometers over the ocean. All this data is incredibly important, even if it breaks up right now. Okay, we can see that flap actuating through the glass.
Starship is passing through 10 kilometers altitude.
Okay, the next milestone will be initiation of the flip maneuver and landing burn. Keep an eye on the bottom right corner of your screen for those 3 center engines to relight. They will gimbal or angle so that the ship flips itself back up vertical and hopefully lands in a vertical position.
And the crowd is very excited to get this view of that flap still maneuvering.
Starship is passing through 5 kilometers altitude.
This is incredible. We're getting very close to splashdown.
These fireflies are such a good sign of life right now. We wish we could see more, but we'll take it.
Starship is at 2 kilometers altitude, terminal velocity.
Landing burn startup for Starship.
All right, good news there.
Nominal chamber pressure.
Landing burn startup.
Starship is in landing burn.
Landing burn shutdown.
The landing burn shutdown was commanded. Wow.